Hey everyone, Lee Pacchia here, and you are watching The Business of Law, the only web TV show focusing on both the challenges and the opportunities facing the legal profession. We're doing a deep dive into China today. I'm happy to say that my guest is Mark Cohen. He's the founder and CEO at Legalmosaic. He's also a regular contributor to Bloomberg BNA's Business of Law website. We're happy to have him join us from Washington, D.C. Mark, welcome.
Thanks very much, Lee. Good to be here.
So you wrote this article for Bloomberg BNA that I thought was really interesting. It looked at the prospects for growth for both legal services and BigLaw in the country of China. You're bullish. Why?
Lots of reasons. First of all, China is a huge market. Second of all, China is making some regulatory moves that make it much more amenable, not only to law, but also to business in general.
We'll get to the regulatory moves in a second, but walk me through why China is specifically a large market for legal services and the kind of stuff that Skadden Arps, Cadwalader, those firms would be selling.
Sure. Well, first of all, Lee, I'll tell you that just in terms of numbers, you start with the fact that China has now somewhere in the order of 50 cities of 15 million or more. That's like saying 50 cities the size of the greater New York metropolitan area. That's pretty unbelievable. And the Chinese government, which had until fairly recently decided that they were going to be, sort of fairly inwardly contained, now realize that two things. Number one, they have a booming domestic economy, but also number two, they are big investors in terms of outside capital, and I think increasingly they are looking to monetize both. Mm-hmm. And that naturally is drawing law firms both to come into China as well as Chinese law firms looking to expand outside of China.
Okay, let's talk about the One Belt, One Road initiative. Walk us through what it is. You call it the Red Bull for Law. Why is that?
Well, as the name of Red Bull suggests, it's an energy drink, and Obor, I think is fair to say, has injected quite a lot of energy into the Chinese economy, both for lawyers and other types of businesses as well. Obor is an acronym, as you said, for One Belt and One Road. It's evoking images of the dynastic times of China and the old Silk Road. Not to be confused with the more recent drug Silk Road. And Obor is basically something of a trade agreement between and among 66 nations throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe. And it was enacted in 2013 by the Chinese government as a way of, sort of reestablishing ties between and among these nations that, are situated on the old Silk Road. So it's an invocation of China's rich history, as well as, I think, a recognition that China wants very much to participate in the 21st century global economy. Mm.
So I wanted to point out that, we're doing this story today because we often talk about what Dentons and Dacheng have done in the Chinese market, but it appears that, there's other stuff happening. This isn't simply a story of Dentons, isn't that right?
That's right. Dentons is only a small part of the story. In fact, I think the story really could be broken up into four parts. The first part really is just the fact that internally, China, as I said, is exploding, and you are seeing a lot of Chinese law firms not getting the size of Wall Street firms, but certainly emerging as, sort of significant legal providers for all this development going on internally within China. Mm-hmm. I think the second component is that what you're seeing is China slowly opening its doors to foreign law firms. And so to mention Dentons, as you referenced, had a very high-profile merger with a Chinese law firm called Dacheng. Interestingly about that, although Dacheng keeps its own name practicing law in China, it adopts the Dentons brand everywhere else in the world. So there is this kind of, sort of double-edged quality to foreign-based firms entering into China. The third prong of it then is not just Denton's, Lee, but it's also other global Goliaths like Baker and McKenzie has recently entered into a similar kind of alliance with a Chinese-based firm. But also significantly, you've got Ernst & Young of the Big Four doing some very, very interesting things in the Chinese legal, not accounting, but legal space.
Mm-hmm. I was speaking with a consultant who follows M&A in the law firm space, and he was wondering if and when we're going to start to see interest among Chinese firms in purchasing or merging or acquiring non-Chinese firms around the world, whether it be a United States firm, an Australian firm, or someone else. Do you think we're coming up to that point in time?
I do, and I'm very glad you mentioned that because that really is the fourth category of activity that's going on in China in the legal market, and that is what's happened is there is a Chinese law firm with a very Anglican name, by the way, Boss and Young. And Boss and Young has decided that they are going to tap into OBOR, the 66-nation alliance that I talked about a few minutes ago. And they have tapped into a kind of a lawyer or law firm referral network. And so suddenly now this Chinese firm has basically strategic law firm partners in 66 nations across the globe, spanning Asia, Africa, Europe. And so they could truly be called a global law firm. And I think it's only a matter of time before Chinese law firms start to tap in, particularly to the British market, where, as you know, they have a much more liberal regulatory climate than in the U.S. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Chinese firm, for example, trying to get an alternative business structure license in the U.K., and then perhaps going into a strategic alliance with the U.S. firms. As you said, some of the big U.S. Goliaths have gone over and are doing business in China, but I see no reason, particularly since there are landlords for so many large trophy properties in the United States, why they shouldn't have a law firm presence here as well.
Mark, always a pleasure. Thanks for your time today, sir.
Pleasure.
That's Mark Cohen, CEO and founder at Legalmosaic. If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at MimesisLaw.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.